I can clearly say I understood one single word, which was my name. And but other than that, it's really, really tough, to understand Polish if you're not at least from the country or from this region. So I truly didn't understand a single word, but at least my name I could remember, and you pronounced it actually quite well. Thank you very much. So first of all, a good morning to everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Open Source Day 2014 here in Warsaw. It's actually for me the 5th time that I'm doing the opening keynote. I haven't been here last year, but the 4 years before in a row, and I can clearly say that every single year it looks like the volume is increasing, and I think also the quality of this event is increasing. I think that follows the trend also what's happening with open source and open innovation in our industry, that is also kind of accelerating in terms of volume and in quality every single day. So I want to talk the next few minutes a little bit about open future with open source. But before I go into the future, I want to quickly go a little bit in the past, and I want to use the example of my trip yesterday. Obviously I had to come here to Warsaw. I'm based in Munich, and explain you on my trip how this trip was kind of followed by technology. And obviously when we started, and I told my assistant I have to come to Warsaw, she had to book a flight. Okay, what does she do? She goes on online booking engines from airlines, and obviously flying over here. I took actually Lufthansa, but last week I was in Dubai, and I flew exactly this picture on the top right with the A380, with the with Emirates, where when you book the tickets, for example, at Emirates Airlines, all the online booking systems are completely powered by open source and Red Hat technology. So it's running on a complete, Red Hat stack, from the operating system up to the middleware, and then their booking engine on top of it. More or less the same is happening with KLM and Air France. When you go to British Airways, their complete data center is virtualized using open source and Red Hat technology. So, there it's a great example. Then, yesterday in the morning, I got up and then I watched TV, and watch the news. When today we go to typical news stations like BBC or others, the majority of these companies using extensively open source technology to pretty much to run their shows. Okay. Then I watched it on a TV, on a classic LCD TV, and you may not know, but 98% of every single TV runs Linux, and there are millions of new TVs every single day. So also a good example. Then obviously I had to make a call to call the cab to pick me up for the airport. When I made the call, I unfortunately didn't have this big phone like there on the picture, because this probably would be more valuable than the phone, on the right. But I made a phone call, and when you see what's happening there in the mobile space, open source is everywhere. Making the call, this call needs to get routed. Okay, and how does it get routed? It gets routed by companies who provide these technologies, so companies like Ericsson and Nokia and Alcatel and so on. These companies using already for years, again, extensively open source technology all over the place. The call needs to get built. When you think about companies like Amdocs as one of the main telco companies in having billing solutions, all their applications are developed on an open source platform. Very interesting. Then, very popular these days, or maybe not so popular, when you make a call, maybe the call gets tapped in by organizations, like with the 3 letters. This is actually the data center in the desert in the US from the NSA. It's maybe not a very good example I should talk about, but the fact is there are tens of thousands servers all running open source technology, and this already for years, and it's happening at the same agencies around the world, not just in the US, same as in the UK and in others. And they're using open source technology because it's the more secure and the better solution for their purpose, even though that's maybe right now not so popular. So let me switch quickly, the topic. So then finally, I called the cab. The cab comes to my house. I live in an area which is not so familiar to everybody with a very small roads and unknown roads. So they needed to have a navigation system. Guess what these navigation systems are powered by? I don't need to tell you what they're powered by. They're powered by open source technology. Then we get on the German highway. German highway system is the largest highway system in Europe. And in Germany, the trucks have to pay toll. So we have an extensive toll system throughout all of Germany. and all the complete toll systems over the thousands of, of highway kilometers is powered by open source technology. They're using, for example, Fuse technology for all the messaging from, when they collect the data from the trucks, to the central sites. Very interesting. So I go to the airport. The cab driver had no gas, so they had to stop at a gas station. What do you think how gas gets found in the first place, or the raw material, which is the oil? All the major oil companies in the world, be it Shell, be it Statoil, be it Exxon, all of these, they need to find oil, so they do their seismic data collection, and then they run massive models to calculate so that they have a high security when they drill that they find oil. And to increase, for them it's crucial that they increase the certainty that they find oil when they drill. Okay? And to use more complicated models, they need more compute power, and they need better systems to handle this compute power. So all of these mega clusters where they have thousands of machines connected together all run open source technology for these calculations. Then arrive at the airport, the Munich airport. I can tell you the complete Munich airport fully powered by open source. When you go there in the tower, there's not a single Windows machine. It is all open source. Okay, got the complete airport managed. I get on the plane. The pilot, before they take off, they get their weather forecast. Guess what? Where the weather forecast companies in the world, be it in the UK, the Met Office, or be it in Germany or in the US, they all do their weather forecasting based on models which is calculated and runs on open source technology. We are finally up in the air. When we're up in the air traffic control takes over. In Europe, all the air traffic control systems are powered by open source, run on Red Hat. If this is not mission critical, then I don't know what mission critical is. At least for me it is, because I arrived here safely and these guys did a good job, guiding the planes, the right way and avoid any collision. Then I arrived, landed here in Poland, got in my car, had to do a little bit of, mobile banking and some trading. When you go into the financial services industry, where again, open source technology is used massively. 65% of the world's equity trading happens on open source technology. This is trillions of dollars, getting processed, powered on an open platform. Finally, I arrived at the hotel. Another good example, NH Hotel, a big hotel chain, here in Europe, using at their check-ins and everywhere, all for the applications, the systems, open source technology. Okay. Then at the check-in, I also had a package delivered, which was delivered by DHL. DHL is an example where they have one of the largest SAP implementations in the world, fully run on an open source stack. Okay, and the same applies actually to Hilti, to point out the other picture, and to Munich Re, which is the second largest or largest reinsurance company in the world. So it is actually everywhere. When you look at the new companies, the Web 2.0 companies, they would not exist without open source technology. They would just not exist. It would have not been possible for Facebook to spin up all these servers if they had to pay license fees. It would just not have been possible. So this was the past, and it's still ongoing, but open source technology is everywhere, okay? But it was in the past more play around, making things, faster, cheaper, kind of better. But we are right now in the midst of the biggest IT transformation, which at least I, in my personal life, so my professional life, have experienced. And this whole transformation is driven by super rapid innovation. And this super rapid innovation solving real world problems. Okay? So now the question here is how does this innovation happen? How can we consume it? And who is playing a dominant role in this, in this transformation? So real quick, you all know this picture. Decades back, we were all sitting on mainframes. Then we get into proprietary stacks, from DEC and so on and Sun. And then we went into the client-server world. Then Linux and open source came around within the internet area and was playing a lot of a, let's say, commodity game. And then we are now in the midst of this complete cloud shift, which is another paradigm shift, which is at least as big or probably much, much bigger than the shift from, classic mainframes to the client-server world. And this cloud shift and the cloud would not exist without open source and Linux. It would not exist. So what is happening today? We have like 4 major, let's call it footprints, where technologies run on. It runs on physical infrastructure, it runs on traditional virtualized infrastructure, it runs on private and in public clouds. And these footprints are converging very, very, very rapidly. So the big problem is there, how do you manage this? Because there's a new world, but at the same time, there is still legacy, and we cannot forget about the legacy, and then legacy needs to be part of this mix, okay? So this is kind of the situation right now, which creates a huge problem, and especially creates a huge problem for the IT organization. Because the demand on IT, the demand from the business on IT is constantly increasing. They need new applications faster out there, more flexible at a lower cost, and the capabilities of IT to deliver and fulfill this demand is really limited. It's limited by the existing current infrastructure. So they now need to drive an innovation which helps them really bridge this gap, because there is a huge, huge gap, in between from this high demand down to, to the capabilities which they have today available. So the big question is, how do we bridge this gap? We are convinced that you cannot bridge this gap by doing it in quotes the old-fashioned way, to do a little bit of an improvement here and a little bit improvement there, and renegotiate maybe an agreement with one of your suppliers to get another 5 or 10% discount. Something more dramatic has to happen, and that's where the whole open innovation comes into play. And open innovation, it's not just about open sourcing and seeing the code. It's about open software development processes. It's about interoperability. It's about sharing resources. So it's this whole process, which at the end the open innovation drives and brings forward. So when you look at the big topics today, when we're talking about big data, when we talk about cloud, when we talk about mobile, all the innovation for these mega trends is happening in open communities. Hadoop, probably everybody's familiar, within the big data space. It's an open source project. Right now, when you go into the cloud space and cloud management and cloud platforms, OpenStack is the super hot topic. And you think about OpenStack is kind of the technology which enables you as an end customer to have kind of an Amazon-like environment within your own 4 walls. Okay? So OpenStack is, just to give further examples, the whole telco industry, where there's a whole trend around NFV, network function virtualization, where the telcos now start also to virtualize their core network functions, which today run more in appliances, within on-premise. The whole industry decided OpenStack is the platform for this virtualization play. Okay? Who is behind OpenStack? Obviously Red Hat, we are the #1 contributor, but big time IBM, big time HP, big time Cisco, big time Intel, big time Rackspace, big time NASA, big time Mirantis, many, many, many companies, big players in our industry are behind this, because there is not a single company which can deliver this promise. It needs to be developed in open communities and really drive this innovation. And then the companies, to make their living, they have to add value on top of this, open source technology. Again, similar is things are happening in the mobile space, or when you look at the cloud application space with platform as a service and so on. It's all coming out of open source communities. It's not anymore a commoditization play. Maybe partially it still is. It's about driving innovation and solving real world problems. And the innovation is happening in these open communities, and the participation in these open communities is really exploding. I'm sure that already many of you here are actually active contributors in these open communities. So I mentioned this, it's went from commoditization to clear, innovation, which is happening. I'm speaking to CIOs, every single week, and the interesting part now is the conversation with the CIOs is really changing. They on one side obviously talk to us because they want to consume our technology and they want to buy, acquire Red Hat technology for their benefits. But at the same time, they're talking to us and they're asking me and say, Red Hat, help me to learn from you how I best can also apply the open source principles to my own organization. And I get these questions from insurance companies, from banks, from all different industries where you would never have thought about it, that they kind of want to use this. They want to kind of, also utilize the power which is behind this community-driven innovation. And they want to learn from us how to best implement this, how to build an internal community, within whatever thousands of developers of a bank, which they run in silos. Okay, applying their open source principles, how we also work in the open source, communities, is essential. And which is really, really interesting and motivating for me that customers are asking us for help, around these topics, not just the technology itself. So very, very, interesting movement. But still important to understand and never forget, how are the products developed? All our products, all the Red Hat products, are developed and start in open source projects, and you have the hundreds of thousands of projects out there, and whatever, the Linux kernel is one project, okay, the compilers is another project, and whatever, the OpenJDK and so on are other projects. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of projects, which then at the end make it into a community, platform like Fedora for Linux, like RDO for OpenStack, and so on, and then turns into enterprise products, which then we as Red Hat, sell to you as customers and offer additional value with them. The essential piece is that everything we do is 100% open source and stays 100% open source. We just announced yesterday that now also we acquired a company called ManageIQ, a year and a half ago, which was closed source technology, where we spent over $100 million to acquire the company, where yesterday, this is our product CloudForms, where yesterday we announced now the opening of a community, and we fully open sourced it. So the community is now called ManageIQ. That's the name of the community. So where you see here the Red Hat logo is now going forward since yesterday is ManageIQ. And with this activity, we actually gave back $100 million back to the community. We spent $100 million for proprietary technology, and we're just giving it back to the community to open source it, and giving it back as open source code, so now that we can have more contributors to it. We are so convinced about the model that is the right thing to do, and that they actually then also will benefit us, even though you have to say, are they crazy, spending $100 million to buy something and then just giving it to everybody for free? Really think about it. We are so convinced about the model, and the model is working. That's why we were absolutely religious about it, and more companies are doing it, which is, I think, very, very important. And the same, as I said, is happening now, that we're not building individual products, that we're building whole platforms, platform for infrastructure as a service, platforms for, platform as a service, and so on. All happening, from these open communities. So open hybrid cloud is our term we use to truly bridge this gap, between the traditional world and the new world, okay? Because you need to have, as I said, an Amazon-type environment within your own premise, but still coping with all your legacy, because you cannot forget about your legacy, and that's why we're talking about an open hybrid cloud, which exactly gives you these capabilities to manage your complete environment, be it physical, traditional, virtualized, private, or public cloud, as one resource pool in a consistent and coherent way, and give you flexibility and interoperability between these different footprints. And this is all possible because at the end, the basis of everything is an operating system, and all the rest, sits kind of on top. So with this, when you look at this, open hybrid cloud, we're trying to address, mainly 3 different audiences, and actually all 4. Where one, it's the core, let's say, the IT operations, where it's about solely about IT efficiency, taking cost out and being more productive, more efficient. But even a bigger focus is on the developer, because it's all about developing applications faster, as I already mentioned. I saw a very interesting study last week, where it was a study about how long does it take to get to the first 50 million users. When the TV came out, it took 30 plus years to get to 50 million users. When the radio came out, it took the radio around 12 or 13 years. It took Facebook 3.5 years to get to 50 million. The newest example, it's an application, it's called, I think, a draw application for kids. It took 3 weeks to get to 50 million users. Means it's all about time to market, it's all about speed, it's all about agility. So that's why it's all about the app, and with this it's all about the developer. And IT needs to empower them with the right infrastructure. So the speed of change is just so incredible, where nobody can sit back and do it the old-fashioned way. So that we as Red Hat, and with our, I think, tools and offerings, helping this journey, because we see the future as has never been so open, and we can do more when we work together, and all of you can be part of this as well. And we see our role as a catalyst within these different communities, the catalyst between customers and partners, developers, and so on. So with this, let's work together and be even more successful. Thank you very much.